The ramp drops. You step off into chest-deep water, 70 pounds of gear dragging you down, and the man next to you goes under. The bombers that were supposed to crater the beach overshot every target. The rockets fell short. 27 of 29 tanks meant to cover your advance are already on the ocean floor. Dug into those bluffs is a veteran German division that Allied intelligence never knew was there. It is June 6, 1944, Omaha Beach. The plan died in the water, but to understand how, you have to start with what these men were promised. A rifleman sits on a wooden bench, lacing his boots in the grey dawn. In his pack is a letter from home, a Bible, a photograph, and every ounce of faith the training had built. Most of the men are young, 19, 20, maybe 22. Some are regulars, hardened by North Africa and Sicily. Others are National Guard, small-town boys from Virginia, Maryland, and Pennsylvania. Company A of the 116th Infantry, Bedford's Sons, stand in tight formation, boots lined up, rifles clean, voices low. The company roster counts about 120 men. In the weeks before the crossing, they drilled the same moves until they could do them blind. At Slapton Sands in England, the whole division rehearsed the landing. They charged up the shingle under live fire, practiced leaping from Higgins boats, crawled through wire, and tossed grenades at wooden bunkers. The sand there was soft, the slope gentle, and the tide predictable. Officers promised that the real beach in France would be much the same. The men believed it. At the end of Exercise Tiger, they stood in ranks, soaked and shivering, but proud. The brass told them the rehearsal had gone well, despite the E-boat disaster that killed hundreds offshore. After that, radio codes were changed, life vest drills became mandatory, and rescue launches were added to the plan. But the core lesson stuck. Stick to your training, trust the plan, and the fire support will do the rest. The company organisation was drilled into every head. 3 rifle platoons, each with 40 men. A weapons platoon with machine guns and mortars. Squad leaders memorised every man's name and job. Each rifleman carried 60 to 80 pounds, the M1 Garand, ammunition, an entrenching tool, rations, a poncho, and a first aid kit. Heavy weapons crews hauled even more. The gear was waterproofed, the rifles coated in oil, the boots double knotted. In the mess line before embarkation, the talk was confident. The plan called for bombers to crater the beach, destroy the wire, and rockets to clear the obstacles. Tanks would land right behind the first wave. The Navy promised a wall of steel ahead of the boats. The men believed that when the ramp dropped, the enemy would be dazed, the bunkers shattered, and the way inland open. They trusted the officers and the firepower. They trusted the drills. The only real fear was of letting the man next to you down. In the hours before dawn on June 6th, the mood in the holds was quiet but steady. Letters were folded away. Helmets checked. Each man had seen the plan, heard the briefings, and believed that with the right training and the right support, they would get through. No one doubted that the plan would hold. Not yet. The water was supposed to be a shield. Bombers, rockets, tanks. Every briefing promised the plan would carry us through the surf and onto dry sand behind a wall of fire. But the truth waited in the grey chop, silent and cold. Intelligence had told us the Germans on Omaha were old men and conscripts, not the 352nd Division. We believed the worst was somewhere else. We were wrong. The 352nd was dug in above Dog Green, their machine guns zeroed, their artillery pre-sighted on every inch of beach. Their presence, 12,000 strong, never showed up in our briefings. No one said a word about them in the holds before dawn. The air was thick with the smell of oil and salt as the landing craft rocked in the swells. The plan called for bombers to crater the sand, to break the wire and shatter the bunkers, but cloud cover forced them to drop early. The bombs landed miles inland, leaving the beach untouched. The rocket ships let loose just before H hour, but the 5-inch rockets fell short, splashing harmlessly into the surf. The sand was smooth as a parade ground, no holes to hide in, no wire blown apart, no bunkers cracked open. The men saw it the moment the ramps dropped. The enemy was not dazed, not broken, not even touched. The tanks were meant to be our shield. The 741st Tank Battalion's D.D. Shermans, amphibious, canvas-skirted, floating on their own engines, should have been rolling up behind us, guns blazing. But the sea was rougher than anyone planned. 29 tanks were launched. 27 sank before reaching shore. The canvas screens tore open in the surf, engines flooded, and crews drowned inside their steel coffins. Only 2 tanks crawled onto the sand, both waterlogged, their main guns jammed. The rest were gone, swallowed in minutes. The infantry waded in alone, carrying 60 to 80 pounds of gear, including rifle, ammunition, grenades, entrenching tool, water, rations, poncho, and first aid kit. The surf ripped away waterproof covers and soaked everything. Boots filled with water. Rifles jammed. The weight dragged men under, and some never came up again. We had trained for a beach that would be torn apart by bombs and rockets, covered by tanks, softened by a wall of steel. But the plan died in the water, and we were left naked in the open, staring up at the bluffs where the real enemy waited. The promised protection was gone, vanished before the first shot was fired. All that remained was the cold, the weight, and the knowledge that no one was coming to save us. 60 to 80 pounds presses into your shoulders, chest and hips. The straps dig in, the canvas rough against skin, rubbed raw by weeks of sweat and salt. The M1 Garand is 9.5 pounds by itself, but it feels heavier with every step. Bandoliers of 30 caliber rounds slap your ribs. Grenades knock against your thigh. A steel helmet, a gas mask, a canteen full of brackish water, a first aid kit, rations, a trenching tool, wire cutters, a rubberized poncho rolled tight, each item with a reason, each ounce justified by some officer's logic. The load list says you will need it all. In the surf, it is just weight. The waterproof covers are supposed to keep the rifles dry. Rubberized canvas, snapped shut with a strip of wire, sealed with a thin layer of oil. The quartermaster swore it would work, but when the ramp drops and you hit the water, the surf tears at everything. Poncho, sheath, laces, even the rifle itself. Salt water soaks through every seam. The oil mixes with the brine, running down the receiver, pooling in the trigger guard. Boots fill instantly. The sand inside grinds your toes to the bone. Each step forward is a fight against the undertow and the gear that wants to drag you under. You try to keep the muzzle up, but the waves come chest high. Some men stumble, lose grip, and the rifle goes under. The moment it is submerged, it is useless, a jam waiting to happen. The action ceases, the rounds corrode, and the first click in the chamber can be your last. About a third of the rifles in the first 30 minutes will not fire. Some men try to clear them with a knife blade or a stick, hands shaking, bullets cracking overhead. Others just drop the weapon and keep crawling, hoping to find another on the sand. It is not just the rifles. The weight of the pack pulls at your shoulders, makes the water feel thicker, colder. Some men go down and do not come up. You hear shouting, then nothing. The surf pulls the living and the dead alike, and the gear meant to keep you alive becomes the thing that drowns you. On the beach, the strongest men are the ones who lose the most. Too much weight, too little breath, boots filled with water and lungs burning. There is no time to think about what you might need later. Every ounce is a risk. Every step is survival. The ramp drops at 0630. Salt spray and diesel smoke hang in the air, thick as soup. The first man out is hit before his boots leave the ramp. No warning, just a crack, and he's gone, swallowed by the surf. The water is chest deep, colder than any training, and the current pulls hard. Machine gun fire rakes the surface, churning up white foam and red streaks. Some men try to run, but the weight of the pack drags them down. Others crawl, slipping on loose stones, boots full of sand and blood. Company A of the 116th Infantry, mostly Bedford boys, is scattered in seconds. The plan said we would land behind a curtain of fire, but the only cover is the bodies of the men ahead. 96 men from Company A are killed, wounded, or missing before most even reach the shingle. The surf is thick with gear, rifles, helmets, packs, and the dead. The beach is open, 300 yards of flat sand, no craters, no wire blown. The German 352nd Infantry is waiting, MG-42s firing from bunkers above, mortars dropping in tight patterns, artillery zeroed on the waterline. Every step is a gamble. Some men crawl, dragging wounded friends behind steel obstacles. Others freeze, pressed flat to the sand, praying the next round misses. The logs from the landing craft show almost no boats made it to their assigned spots. The current pushed us east, right into the worst of it. Officers are cut down trying to rally the squads. Medics crawl from man to man, ignoring the bullets, hands shaking as they try to stop the bleeding. Some men make it to the shingle and collapse, gasping, unable to move. Others are lost in the surf, pulled under by the weight of their own gear. No one is giving orders. The radios are silent or smashed. The plan is gone. What's left is instinct. Dig in, stay low, try not to scream. The sand is already littered with the first wave. The rest of Company A is gone before the sun is high. The only thing moving forward now is fear and the will to survive. 300 yards. That's the distance between the waterline and the shingle bank, a strip of open sand, flat as a rifle range, with nowhere to hide. The tide pulls at your ankles, then your knees, then you're crawling, dragging yourself past the bodies and wrecked gear. The sand is coarse, littered with helmets, rifles, packs, everything ripped loose by panic or death. Ahead, the shingle bank rises like a promise of safety, a ridge of rounded stones piled by centuries of waves. But the real barrier isn't the stones. It's the wall of fire coming from the bluffs above. Bluffs dominate everything. They rise 100 feet at the back of the beach, steep and bare except for the German bunkers you had dug into their face. Machine guns sweep the sand, firing in long, flat bursts that cut down anything that moves. Mortars drop shells behind the shingle, searching for anyone who makes it that far. Every few seconds, the air cracks with the sound of an 88 or a 75, their shells landing with a thump that you feel in your chest. The noise is constant. The only way forward is to crawl, pressed flat against the sand, praying you're below the line of fire. The kill zone stretches the full width of Omaha. The tide, higher than predicted, funnels everyone into a narrow strip. The planners missed how the water would shift the landing craft east, bunching the waves together. The current pushes men out of position, right into the worst of the crossfire. No one is where they're supposed to be. Squads are mixed, officers gone, radios smashed or lost in the surf. Orders vanish in the chaos. You look for someone, anyone, giving direction, but the only thing that matters is staying low and breathing. Movement stops. Not because anyone decides to stop, but because there's nowhere left to go. The beach is too wide, too open, the bluffs too steep. The shingle bank offers a few feet of shelter from direct fire, but the mortars reach everywhere. Some men dig at the stones with bare hands, trying to disappear. Others freeze, paralyzed by the weight of gear, exhaustion and fear. Medics crawl from body to body, dragging the wounded behind obstacles, ignoring the bullets that snap overhead. The tide keeps rising, pushing the dead and the living closer together. For 2 hours, the beach is a trap. The plan is dead. The only thing left is survival. No one moves forward, no one moves back. The kill zone holds everyone in place, pinned by the bluffs and the unbroken fields of fire. The shingle is the end of the line, until someone, somewhere, decides to move again. The bluffs above Omaha never seemed so high as when the order came to move. For hours, men had pressed themselves into the shingle, pinned by machine guns and mortars, waiting for a miracle that never arrived. Then, through the smoke and the screams, a figure stood up, Colonel Cotter, his helmet pushed back, his voice cutting through the chaos. He said, "Get up, get off this beach. If you stay here, you die." He did not shout it like an order, he barked it like a dare. Some men looked away, others stared, but a few started to crawl, then to run, slipping over the stones, dragging themselves toward the base of the bluff. Lieutenant Taylor saw what Cotter was doing and followed suit, gathering the remnants of his company, strangers now, mixed from every shattered unit. No one waited for a chain of command. No one waited for a plan. Taylor grabbed the nearest man by the collar, pointed up the slope and said, "With me." They moved in short bursts, hugging the ground, using every shell hole and burned out tank for cover. The air was thick with dust and the stink of cordite. Every breath tasted of sand and blood. Behind them, the destroyers had crept in close, so close you could see the white spray where their hulls kissed the bottom. The radio men, crouched behind wrecked obstacles, called in targets on the German bunkers. Within minutes, 5-inch shells slammed into the concrete, sending up geysers of rock and dust. The machine gun fire slackened, just for a moment. That was all it took. Cotter led the charge up the bluff, bullets snapping past, men dropping, others surging forward. Taylor's group found a break in the wire, blown open by a Bangalore torpedo. They crawled through, hearts hammering, boots slipping in the mud, and then they were up, over the crest, into the scrub behind the beach. For the first time all morning, it felt like the enemy was on the back foot. The plan was gone, but the men were moving. That was enough. Medics carried nothing heavier than their own packs, and a satchel marked with a red cross. But on that sand they bore the weight of every man who cried out for help. There was no safety, no aid station, no tent, no shelter from the fire. If you called for a medic, you called into the open, hoping someone would risk his life for yours. Most did. They crawled through surf and blood, dragging men by the collar, hands pressed to wounds, bandages soaked through before they could even tie a knot. Sometimes the only cover was a twisted hedgehog or the body of a friend. A medic's job was triage in the sand. Find who could be saved, who needed morphine, who was already gone. There was no time for prayer, just tourniquets, sulfur powder, and the shaking of hands that would not stop. The buddy system was more than a tactic. It was the only reason some men survived. If you lost your rifle, your friend handed you his spare. If you froze, he dragged you forward. If you went down, he came back for you. The National Guard boys from Bedford clung to each other. Not for glory, but because home was the man beside you. Medics patched wounds as best they could, but it was the hands of a friend that pulled you behind a beam or hauled you up the shingle. No one remembers the names of every man who did this, but every survivor does. There was no organised evacuation. The wounded piled up behind steel obstacles, bleeding into the sand, calling for water, for mothers, for God. Sometimes a medic could do nothing but hold a hand until the end. In that chaos, the bonds forged in training became lifelines. The plan was gone. What held the line was brotherhood, one man's courage feeding another's hope, and the medics who refused to let fear be the last thing a man felt. We hit the stones cold, soaked, wrecked by fear and weight, our boots dragging, plans shredded by noise and blood. Most of Company A never made it off Dog Green. The bombardment missed. The tanks sank. But men, terrified, battered, half-drowned, kept crawling forward anyway. That's what endures, not strategy, not glory, but the will to keep moving when everything else fails. Remember that. And if these memories haunt you, you're not alone.